The Panthers were back on the practice field on Monday morning for day 13 of training camp. I'll tell you what I saw as the Panthers prepare for Thursday's joint practice with the Jets right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where beginning tomorrow on Wednesday, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back throughout the entirety of the regular season. Then once the regular season wraps up, we're back to the weekly Friday mailbag. So either at me or DM me. But of course, follow me first on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in right now for tomorrow's weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find a qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Day 13 of training camp is in the books for the Panthers on Monday morning. They'll have Tuesday off. They'll be back out there on Wednesday. Then Thursday, the final day of training camp, will also be the one day the Panthers have of joint practice with the New York Jets ahead of their second preseason game on Saturday evening right at Bank of America Stadium, 800 South Main Street. Cannot wait to see what happens on Thursday. I'll be out there. Will not be at the game on Saturday. Still TBD who of the Carolina Panthers players will even be participating in that game. As we know, last week did not get to see the starters. Adam Thielen said this weekend he doesn't feel like it's necessary. Adam's also 34. He's a vet. He doesn't really need to go out there, but we'd like to see, at least I would like to see, some Panther players out there against another team. And this would be the week possibly to do it, but also at the joint practice, maybe it's not all that important for them to do so, as they're going to get a lot of good work in on Thursday. So I'll have boots on the ground Thursday morning for that. And I, of course, will report back to y'all here on Thursday on Locked On Panthers. And I'll get you set for that also before we get Thursday later on this week. But on today's show, let's talk about what I saw on day 13 of Panthers training camp. It was an abbreviated practice. Typically, they go about an hour and a half, hour 40, maybe even 2 hours. And today, it was wrapped up in about 68 minutes. Looked at my watch, couldn't believe it. It was 10:38, and they were done. So the Panthers did not need to get a lot of work in today. I guess they only did a couple individual periods, only had team drills, only for 2 periods. One of them was padded. The other one was in shorts, and really that was just installs, as they weren't really doing a lot at all. So going over at least what I saw from, again, an abbreviated padded practice, one that then turned into installs at the end. Yosh Nijman, the Panthers' backup tackle, their swing tackle for the season. He currently is working his way back from a reinforcement surgery from a broken tibia. Dave Canales let us know this past weekend that he is a long ways from being back, and that is not encouraging based off of what we saw on Thursday, as Padera Traore, who injured his knee in that preseason game against New England, and Ricky Lee both struggled at that backup tackle position. Now, fortunately, the Panthers do have Brady Christensen, who has played tackle and got to play tackle out of necessity on Thursday and is a former starter here, and I think someone who can be relied upon at the very least in the interior, but also if you need him at tackle in a pinch, I think he can get the job done. Will he get the job done at the same level as Taylor Moton and as Ike Ekwonu? Maybe not, but can he at least be replacement level in the NFL? I do think that is the case. So I still feel like, even though the offensive line did not look great, and that was a bunch of backups, and there's questions about depth, they still aren't in a bad position at tackle if somebody goes down, because they have someone like Brady Christensen available. But hearing that Yosh Nijman, who was an important signing for them this offseason, you go back to last year, there wasn't anybody who could have stepped up. It had something gone on with Icky or with Taylor Moton. The Panthers would have been screwed in that situation. Brady Christensen, who could have been a candidate, He was hurt after week 1. And then behind those guys, there wasn't really a true tackle on this roster. Ricky Lee, the undrafted free agent a year ago at North Carolina A&T, possibly he could have stepped in, but as we saw, likely would not have gone well. And again, not like Icky played all that well last year, but still would have been a significant drop-off had he been called into duty a year ago. Feel like they're still in a decent spot there, but not the best news to hear that your backup tackle, your swing tackle, Yosh Nijman, is still a long ways from being back. Does that mean he starts up season on PUP? Does that mean he'll be ready week 2? We don't know right now, but we do know that the Panthers are going to face the Jets this weekend. See him enjoy practice on Thursday, next week against Buffalo. And we are only, 14 days, 2 weeks away from the initial 53-man rosters. We'll find out really by then what the plans are for Nijman short-term and possibly long-term here this season in Carolina. A couple of vet days for guys, Deontay Johnson, Xavier Woods, Devion Clowney, K'Lavon Chaisson, all out there, not in pads. Xavier Legette, he was out at practice for the first time since exiting practice a week ago on Sunday with a foot injury that came back negative when looking at his MRI. He only went through individual drills when looking at team drills, the padded portion, and then just the installs and shorts. Did not have his helmet out there, so we'll see if he'll be ready to go on Thursday. I will not be out there practice on Wednesday, so I'm sure someone will ask whether he'll be someone who will practice. Tommy Tremble. Apparently, Tim Canales said he was not expecting Tommy Tremble to practice against the Jets. He was, though, at practice for the first time in pads on Monday morning. He worked through individual drills, then also did see him in the install period later on during practice. So Tommy Tremble in a banged-up tight end position room where Stephon Sullivan, he has been waived after he was injured. You have Ian Thomas still working his way back, and Ian Thomas came out later on in practice with Maury Barno and DJ Woonham, the two guys that are also on PUP. Now, Thomas is not, but Barno and Woonham, they're on PUP, working their way back, respectively, from an ACL tear for Barno and Woonham with a quad tear suffered last year when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, and that's still a situation. 2 weeks from now, we'll know whether he's going to start on PUP or if he'll be ready to go potentially in the first 4 weeks of the season. That's still to be determined. But good news that Tommy Tremble had a very important position if the Panthers have a tight end where they want to utilize those tight ends more. We saw last year what Cade Otton did in that Buccaneers offense, which is far more what the Panthers tight ends combined did, and they've really struggled since Greg Olsen left. And I'm hoping now with Jatavion Sanders, who did not get targeted in that game on Thursday, but he's getting a ton of reps. Jordan Matthews, I got a lot more on him later on here on the show, as he was awesome to talk to on Monday morning. Really got to root for. He's out there looking like somebody who's going to make the team. Tremble getting back healthy. That is good news. And Ian Thomas also should be ready to go. Well, at least it will be right up to week 1. We'll find out if he is ready to go against New Orleans on the road that weekend. Andy Dalton, he's still working his way back. He was back out there again with all the guys at quarterback. Looking at the team period, again, had one that was padded, one that was in shorts, but that was really just installs. The padded one, Jamie Robinson, saw him in a dime package with Xavier Woods out. Chandler Zavala, he was in at left guard. It's Damian Lewis. Did not see him out there on the field. He's been dealing with a shoulder. We'll see if he's out there on Wednesday, really on Thursday when I go up against the Jets. And that is going to be the primary thing I am looking to see on Thursday. How does this offensive line match up against the Jets defensive line that dominated them last year and should be really good this year, even though our old friend Hassan Reddick has asked for a trade. The Jets told him, no, we're not going to trade you. Get your tail to practice. We'll see how that plays out. I would love to know. I'm sure there's going to be somebody asking me, should the Panthers trade for Hassan Reddick? It'd be nice to have Hassan Reddick. I don't think the Panthers are going to meet what he wants to get paid. But that will be an interesting thing to watch as the Panthers offensive line faces off against still a very good Jets defensive line and pass rush. DJ Johnson, Eku Leota, they were the first two guys out there at outside linebacker today with Chaisson and Clowney not available. Damani Richardson had a strong day right off the bat. Starting off padded 11v11. Bryce Young gets picked off over the middle by Damani Richardson, the undrafted free agent out of A&M. He read it the entire way. Excellent pick by him. Later on, Jack Plummer, he came in at quarterback. We know he struggled last week. I'm not a huge believer in Plummer, and I wonder what the Panthers are truly going to do with that third quarterback spot, if they are going to indeed utilize it on the 53, or if they're just going to bring somebody in as a practice squad guy and have him potentially be that man. But Plummer, I couldn't tell. I thought it was an interception. talking to other people around me, they felt like it was a PBU. When we talked to Ejiro Evero after practice, he said it's an interception. He said anything that's close, they're calling an interception. I thought just looking from 100 yards away, it looked like an interception to me. But that man went out there. He made some plays, picked off Bryce. I thought he picked off Jack Plummer. Whether he did, great play. And that was also a terrible throw by Plummer, who just rolled out to the left, waited, just threw it up there. And just, what are you doing in that situation? He's the one who really stood out. The defense just looked better than the offense during that period. And that has kind of been a theme oftentimes. And I feel like that is always the case a lot of times early on when you get to camp with the pads on the defense side of the offense. We're going to need to see the Panthers offense play better against this Jets defense on Thursday to feel encouraged about the upcoming season. As far as the 11v11, Shaq Thompson, he was out there at practice. He's been dealing with a hamstring. He was out in the 54, and I totally forgot Shaq went back to his number. I was looking, I was like, who's 54? I was like, oh, that's right. It's Shaq Thompson. He's no longer wearing 7. Good to see that he's back in the 54. He was out there during the 11v11 shorts period as they're going through installs and also went through individual drills. Tommy Trimble, he also participated in that portion of 11v11. And then that was it. So not a long practice, not too many things to take away from what I saw there on Monday. But this team is preparing for Thursday, knowing this can be a not necessarily a big challenge, but going to be able to answer a lot of questions and see exactly where they are as they match up against a team that, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, and there's a nice little story I got for you here in a moment from Ejiro Evero on Aaron Rodgers, but having Aaron Rodgers, having Sauce Gardner, some quality players, and that's a team that believes, whether right or wrong, that they're going to contend in the AFC East and potentially for the Lombardi Trophy. Good to get a chance to look at Panthers versus the New York Jets, even though it's like still the Jets. But let's take a quick pause here. I'll come back. Ejiro Evero, Panthers defensive coordinator, spoke to us on Monday. Had some interesting things to say. Go over what he had to say here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring back huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Panthers defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero spoke to us after practice on Monday. Good time to sit down with EJ, see where his defense is at as they are preparing for joint practice, final day of training camp on Thursday versus the Jets before they do face off on Saturday evening against the Jets. And we did ask him just his thoughts on getting to see a lot of the backups out there on Thursday instead of his starters. And he agreed that it's a great opportunity for the team to get to see what they have depth-wise. And I do think guys like Alex Cook, Lamar Jackson, they certainly acquitted themselves well. I thought that Deshaun Jameson played well in that Thursday night game, Eku Leota as well. And there is value in being able to see what you have behind your starters. And the Panthers needed to see that. This is one of the best times, if not the best time, to add to your roster. You're evaluating all other teams in the NFL, getting to see their preseason games, getting to see what they do out there at joint practices, and trying to figure out what guys who may not fit in certain spots may fit here in Carolina. So as unfortunate it was to not be able to see some of the starters and gain something from that experience, the Panthers did get something out of watching their backups. And thinking about, too, this offseason, you look at the additions that they've made. They bring in Josie Jewell at linebacker, A'Shawn Robinson. You got Jordan Fuller, Nick Scott both there in the secondary. Those are 4 guys that have spent time in this system. They have played for either Ejiro Evero in Denver or in LA with the Rams. And Ejiro brought up that the fact that they have so many guys who have been in this defense before. And even thinking about a guy like Clowney, who says that it's pretty similar to what he ran in Houston when he had really his last good back-to-back years. The last 2 seasons he spent with the Texans, a team that originally drafted him out of South Carolina. It's good to know that you have a guy like that who comes in, feels comfortable, and then you already have players who were in the scheme last year, guys who have been in Denver and LA with Ejiro, and Ejiro said that they have not really skipped the beat because of that. He feels like they picked up right where they left off last year, which is great for a defense where had a lot of injuries. We understand that, but a lot of young guys like Deshaun Jameson, like DiCaprio Bootle, like Alex Cook, who have stepped up certain points of time, and they've come out here and they have looked good so far. They had to play last year, and now they're back with a year under their belt of experience. And that also goes to guys who have been around here. Even if Shaq Thompson missed last season, still Shaq Thompson was in the scheme all off season and was in it for the first 6 quarters of the season last year before going down. Derek Brown, he's been in. J.C. Horn, despite his injuries, he's been in as well. While the offense, they're starting over. And that's so refreshing to hear and encouraging to hear that this defense is picking up where they left off last year, despite all of still the change. And I wondered if that would be the case, considering all the guys that had connections, while the offense, they're still trying to get to where they need to get to, and they're doing it the way that Dave Canales sees fit. But still, a lot of unknown there. Defensively, there's still questions, I would say. But I'm happy to hear that as far as Ejiro Evero is concerned, this defense, there's not that much of a learning curve from what he had last year to what they are right now heading into joint practice in the second week of the preseason. A couple guys that he did shout out as far as just their improvement, as he was asked about the pass rush, and that is still something that I don't think is going to be good this season. But guys like Eku Leota, who looked outstanding as far as just what expectations were and just the way he really did perform on Thursday, he was shouted out. Luigi Villain, also, he got a couple pressures on Thursday against the Patriots. DJ Johnson as well, he got a lot of burn, and he was able to make a pretty good pressure that led to a sack. I believe for Derek McClendon in that second half, I believe right in the third quarter, those 3 guys that Ejiro Evero, he pointed out as guys that have really made an improvement at that outside linebacker spot and stopping the run. That's going to be what they're most concerned about first and foremost. If you can stop the run, you got to force a team to pass, and his secondary in this scheme is really what's allowed the shine. Now, it'd be nice to be able to get after the passer as well, which you would love to do, but you got to be able to stop the run, because if you can't stop the run, teams are never going to pass the ball on you. They're going to be able to take down the clock and all that. You're going to keep your offense off the field, and that's not what you want at all. So good to hear that those guys are stepping up. As far as the safety spot, he thinks it's a really strong group. He said that he considers the team has 3 starting safeties: Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller, and Nick Scott. I've talked about this. Xavier Woods was low-key one of the better players on the Panthers last year, and quite possibly the most underrated player on this team. Played like a top 10 safety in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. Jordan Fuller was a solid starter last year in LA. We talked to him as well, and he was saying how cool it is to have X out there with him and Nick Scott, who was a former teammate of his back in LA. And for those guys to be able to feed off of each other, to be able to learn and to really grow together, and to have 3 guys with experience in the NFL at the safety position as starters. And Nick Scott, he was not good in Cincinnati. You look at Pro Football Focus, which again is just one way to look at things. They had him as the worst safety in the NFL in terms of qualifying safeties last season in the National Football League. But that's a different scheme than the one he's playing in. Think about this. Von Bell, I thought he was solid here last year. Was he as good as Woods? No. Von Bell had never played in this scheme. So this is not a scheme that he was necessarily familiar with. He leaves after this offseason where they get rid of him. They waive him this offseason. He goes right back to Cincinnati, where he's comfortable playing in Lou Anarumo, who's their defensive coordinator, his scheme. He just wasn't a scheme fit. I wonder if maybe Nick Scott wasn't a scheme fit in Cincinnati, and now he's back in a scheme where he's more comfortable in, and he has a defensive coordinator who has worked with him before as a secondary position coach, and now he's seen as a joint starter along with Xavier Woods and Jordan Fuller. I wonder if that's the best way to look at it. Maybe that's the positive spin to things, but also think about just not every player fits in every scheme. And clearly Nick Scott, whether he just did not fit for Cincinnati as a starter last season, or it seems like early on in Carolina, he does fit. Now we'll see once we get to the season what he looks like. And Thursday will be another nice glimpse at that. That's where they're at right now with their starting safeties, and joint practice happening on Thursday. It's been a trend among a lot of teams. It feels like the last I don't know, 5 or 6 years where they would prefer to get joint practice and have multiple in and sit out their guys in the preseason, as there is a more controlled environment and teams feel like they can get more work done than they can. At least they can get it better work done during in joint practice than they can in the preseason game. Ejiro Evero talked about how he finds it beneficial going back to last season when they did face off against these Jets in Wofford, and Aaron Rodgers was out there as a quarterback. He talked about one time Rodgers stepped up and he looked at the Panthers defense and he knew that the safety was going to move over here, linebacker was going over there, just calling out exactly the formation the Panthers were in and what they were going to do. And Ejiro said that's why you have to be better at disguising your coverages, because the elite guys like an Aaron Rodgers are going to see that. And it was a learning moment for him and for his team and their ability moving forward. And I'm sure that they were able to actually grow from that, as defense at points in time last season, especially against the pass, was pretty solid. So that's one of the things you can point out that is beneficial for him and for the Panthers as they head into that joint session with the Jets on Thursday morning here in Uptown Charlotte. Jordan Matthews, we also spoke to him on Monday. He has, I think, a really awesome story as he's been transitioning from being a wide receiver to tight end and just his road to potentially making 53 in 2 weeks' time. We'll talk about that here and also update some of the roster moves made over the weekend in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't use other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions and make the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Really cool story happening right now here in Carolina, as Jordan Matthews is looking like he's going to be the fourth tight end on the initial 53-man roster. Someone who I certainly counted out heading into training camp. I looked at it. The Panthers already had Tommy Tremble. They had Ian Thomas, the survivor. He was going to be back again for another season at the tight end spot. They drafted Jatavion Sanders. And I also looked at the fact that Stephon Sullivan had a history with this staff dating back to his time in Seattle and felt like those were going to be the four. Jordan Matthews, though, Frank Reich guy, someone who played wide receiver, was a number one wide receiver when he came into the league out of Vanderbilt, and then someone who has now converted to the tight end position, and it's taken him a while to really get in the right weight and shape and the ability to play tight end at the NFL level and to be on a 53-man roster. Did not get to really see much of him last year at the tail of the season when he came over and played for Frank Reich and the Panthers, but he's here now. And because of the injury to Stephon Sullivan, him no longer being here, Ian Thomas, Tommy Tremble, those guys going out, and just his work ethic and his mentality, he is in a prime position to make the 53 in 2 weeks' time. And I'm rooting for him. I truly am rooting for this guy. I was left just really impressed by him on Monday morning when he sat up there and he spoke to us, to media, right after practice. And this is somebody who I followed since his career at Vanderbilt. I remember that insane game. God, I feel like it had been like 2014 or something like that when he was playing against Ole Miss. He got laid out, made a great catch, and like was thrown up on the field. Just great game. It was like him, Laquan Treadwell was playing in that game. Back, I still had, I think, that Bo Nix, Kim Dichie, a really good Ole Miss Vanderbilt game. Kind of a weird, like, it's not a rivalry, but they played a ton of times in their history in the SEC. But I just remember him back then and then looking what he did with the Eagles. And it's cool to see that he's now in this position after making the decision himself to go to tight end. You wonder, how does someone who was a pretty solid receiver at one point in time decide that I'm going to bulk up and I'm going to be a tight end and play close to the line of scrimmage in a far more physical position than the one that I've been accustomed to throughout my football life. He said that it was his decision, that he called Kyle Shanahan back when he was with the 49ers, and he told Kyle, look, man, you got me out here doing a lot of blocking. I'm doing more things like George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk than I am doing stuff like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and the rest of these guys. Like, why don't I just become a tight end? And Kyle Shanahan told him, all right, if you want us to take you seriously at that spot, and we like you as a player, we think you're a great locker room presence, you're going to have to get to 235 pounds. That was on, and he said this by July 4th. The phone call, as Jordan told us, was on May 25th of that year. He was at 215. So by July 4th, just over a month, Kyle Shanahan wanted him to get up to 235 pounds, which he did. He got to that, did not make the team, and he has spent times where he's been waiting for phone calls, and Kyle Shanahan, he's called, or other teams have called, and he's got workouts, but he wasn't getting the call to be a wide receiver anymore. But once he decided to move the tight end, plenty of teams were trying to hit him up, and he told us about how when he was getting to that new regiment to get up to that playing weight, be able to also move the way he was moving before as wide receiver. He had a personal chef, certain supplements he was taking, had to completely rework his entire diet and routine, forcing food down his body, which is just insane that these guys got to go to those lengths. But we think about a guy like Jordan Gross. Once he retired, look how skinny he was. That's not a guy who naturally was 300 pounds. He had to do so many things to get into that shape and that weight. And I was just impressed by Jordan and his story. And he said that he really isn't focused too much on, locker room stuff prior to practice. Like, he wants to get out there early. He knows that he's out there to provide for his family. Like, he loves this game, and he showed himself that he loved it by his commitment to change and to be able to transition to a tight end and do all the work that he needed to do then and now to be in a position now where I feel like he's going to make the roster. And I'm happy for him. I think it's a great story. And we look at the last couple of years, the Panthers really have not been winning. And you wonder how many guys are lovable figures, guys you can root for. I mean, this is certainly somebody I think you can root for, even if it's not somebody that you're thinking about as he's like the fourth tight end on the roster, just to have that perspective that he gave us today and just talk about how he does have those in-depth conversations with his teammates. But when he's out there on the field, man, his focus is on providing for his family, making this team better. And I just really enjoyed that availability that we had with him on Monday. And I'm absolutely rooting for him to make the roster in a couple weeks' time and hoping that he'll also stick once that all goes down in a couple of weeks. The kick controversy, that's over. Got that news on Sunday. The Panthers released Harrison Mevis, and they signed Western Carolina tackle Tyler Smith to replace his spot on the roster. I never felt like this was truly a competition. I wondered whether it would be. Pinheiro not showing up for the offseason program, which is rare for kickers. That is what really led to this actually being a competition. I do now wonder, will the Panthers give him his money, or are they going to let this drag out through the entirety of the season and then figure out something in March? We'll see. There has not been any momentum, at least in the last, 36 hours or so since the news came out, towards Pinheiro getting a new deal. But Mevis, the thicker kicker, no longer here. The Panthers also made a couple of other moves. They signed veteran defensive tackle Walter Palmore and added offensive lineman Jack Anderson after they had workouts. Also brought back wide receiver Tavian Robinson, with Jaden Crumedy injuring his ankle in that preseason game on Thursday, and Badera Troy also getting injured with that knee injury on Thursday. And Cade Mays dealing with an AC sprain in his shoulder. He's going to miss a couple of weeks. They needed to bring in some more guys up front. They did that with Paul Moore, Jack Anderson, of course, Tyler Smith, as they waived Harrison Mevis. The corresponding moves were to waive cornerback Willie Drew, running back Jaden Sheardon, and then they waived /injured wide receiver Devin Tompkins, who came in here special teams wise, and was also someone who came in with a little bit of controversy. Did not last that long for, I guess, the slight PR headache, which maybe even wasn't one at all. But there are the latest roster moves here in Carolina. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I'm back tomorrow answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.